The Bible is not just a book of faith and salvation. It is a trove of surprising stories and characters with contrasting personalities. Among them are women who shine not only for their beauty or intellect, but also for their ruthlessness and perilous nature. You wouldn't believe the things they did to achieve their aims. Prepare yourselves, because in today's video we will explore the 5 most ruthless and dangerous women in the Bible who left a dark mark on religious history. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell to ensure you never miss a video from our channel, where we bring insightful and inspiring discoveries about the Bible and faith. Number 1. Jezebel. Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, king of Sidon, and high priest of Astarte, the pagan goddess, left a profound influence on the Bible. Her marriage to Ahab, king of Israel, was not just a political agreement, but also marked the beginning of a tumultuous period of religious and power struggles. Jezebel was a devoted worshiper of Baal, the Canaanite god, and she relentlessly encouraged the worship of Baal and Asherah in Israel, leading the nation into moral decline. Her cruelty was not only shown in her actions, but also in her dark plots to replace the worship of Yahweh. Jezebel built a temple and altar for Baal, infiltrating every corner of Israel, pulling the nation away from the Lord God. She not only influenced King Ahab, but also caused him to abandon the faith of his ancestors, leading the whole nation into false rituals. 1 Kings 16:31-33. Her actions were both religious and political, as she merged Israel's religion with the values of her own people. One of Jezebel's most enraging and terrifying acts was the killing of Naboth, who owned the vineyard Ahab craved. When Naboth refused to sell his vineyard, Jezebel devised a ruthless plan to frame him, leading to his wrongful execution, so Ahab could claim the vineyard. 1 Kings 21:7-16. This act not only reflected her cruelty, but also illustrated Jezebel's willingness to employ any tactic, including lies and crimes, to fulfill her desires. When Elijah, the prophet of Yahweh, dared to confront Jezebel and her family, she was infuriated. After Elijah's triumphant victory over the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, Jezebel was determined to exact revenge. She swore to kill Elijah, forcing him to flee for his life. 1 Kings 19:1-2. This relentless pursuit demonstrated Jezebel's deep hatred for anyone who stood in the way of her religious plans, especially the prophets of Yahweh. Jezebel's cruelty was not just evident in her actions, but also in her wicked plots to eliminate the prophets of Yahweh, creating a climate of fear and oppression for the faithful. 1 Kings 18:4. One of God's servants, Obadiah, had to hide 100 prophets in caves to protect them from Jezebel's fury. In the end, her ruthless life came to a tragic end when Jehu, at the command of the prophet Elisha, came to Jezreel to overthrow the house of Ahab. In her last desperate attempt to resist, Jezebel made herself up and taunted Jehu from the window. But her fate was a tragic one. Jehu ordered her to be thrown from the window, and horses trampled her body, leaving only her head, hands, and feet, fulfilling Elijah's prophecy. Dogs will eat Jezebel's flesh by the wall of Jezreel. 2 Kings 9:30-37. Jezebel's legacy serves as a cautionary tale about the brutality and devastation that sin brings. Her name is synonymous with betrayal and evil, acting as a vivid reminder of the destructive power of wickedness and the certainty that divine justice will not be ignored. Number 2. Athaliah, the queen of cruelty and ambition. Athaliah, the daughter of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, was born into a family known for its cruelty and idol worship. She not only inherited the throne, but also perpetuated the sinful practices her parents had established in Israel. As the child of 2 kings of Israel, Athaliah grew up in an environment of power and ambition, where authority was held above all else. After her parents' death, Athaliah sought not just to defend the throne, but also to expand and strengthen her power at any cost. Athaliah's marriage to Jehoram, king of Judah, was a politically charged alliance aimed at consolidating her control over both Israel and Judah. However, when her husband died and her son Ahaziah took the throne, the dynamics began to shift. Ahaziah's reign over Judah was brief and weak. After his death in a war with Aram, Athaliah saw the perfect moment to seize the throne and didn't hesitate to go to any lengths to make it hers. Upon learning of her son's death, Athaliah immediately ordered the massacre of all potential heirs to the throne, as recorded in 2 Kings 11, 1-3. She didn't spare even the infants she saw as a threat to her power. For 6 years, Joash was concealed in the temple, while Athaliah ruthlessly continued her reign over Judah with absolute cruelty. Yet a brave woman, Jehosheba, secretly hid her nephew Joash in the temple of God. Jehosheba, the sister of Ahaziah, preserved the life of Joash, a direct descendant of David, safeguarding the future of Judah and the Davidic dynasty. Athaliah's reign was both a time of bloodshed and a period of religious degeneration. She continued to propagate the worship of foreign gods, a tradition inherited from her parents. This caused Judah to remain entangled in the worship of Baal and Asherah, echoing the corruption that had taken place under Ahab and Jezebel in Israel. Athaliah used her power to sustain the rule of foreign gods, an act that not only corrupted the people's faith, but also plunged the nation into decadence. Ultimately, Athaliah's reign faced resistance. Jehoiada, the high priest of the house of David, and a devout follower of both the Davidic line and God, decided it was time to act. After concealing Joash in the temple for 6 years, Jehoiada formulated a plan to restore Joash to the throne and overthrow Athaliah. He partnered with military leaders and temple guards to prepare the coup. At just 7 years old, Joash was declared the legitimate king of Judah by Jehoiada, causing a wave of excitement among the people. Tired of Athaliah's cruel reign, they quickly rallied behind Joash. When Athaliah heard the cheers of the people and the sounds of trumpets announcing the change, she rushed to the temple to confront the situation. However, upon seeing Joash seated firmly on the throne with a crown upon his head, she tore her clothes and screamed, "Treason! Treason!" a cry of desperation and anger upon realizing she had lost her grip on power. But she could not escape her fate, as Jehoiada ordered her capture and the execution of anyone loyal to her. Athaliah was dragged out of the temple through the horse gate and executed, marking the end of her brutal reign. 2 Kings 11, 12-16. The death of Athaliah did more than end her despotic rule. It marked the restoration of the Davidic dynasty through Joash. Under Joash's leadership, Judah slowly began to heal and reform its religious practices, returning to God and his righteous values. Athaliah's life and death offer a profound lesson on ambition and cruelty, reminding us that unchecked power inevitably leads to ruin. Her reign serves as a stark reminder of the destructive consequences of power misuse and unyielding cruelty, offering a warning to those who seek power without integrity. Number 3, Herodias, the queen of hatred and ruthless power play. Herodias' story is one filled with hatred and power struggles in the Bible, where her greed and cunning led her to actions beyond imagination. Herodias was a prominent figure in the Herodian dynasty, the ruling family of Judea, where marriages were political tools used to consolidate power. Originally married to Herod Philip, her uncle, Herodias controversially abandoned him to marry Herod Antipas, his cousin and tetrarch of Galilee, forging a union that was both ethically questionable and a clear violation of Jewish law. Herodias was not only a prominent figure in the Herodian dynasty because of her scheming marriages, but also because of her blind hatred and ambition. She relentlessly sought power, regardless of the harm and crimes that had to be committed to achieve it. The confrontation between Herodias and John the Baptist was not merely a personal conflict, but a battle between greed and faith. Herodias' hatred drove her down a path full of bloodshed and scheming. When John criticized her unlawful marriage, Herodias could not bear it, and her hatred began to boil. She decided not to let the opportunity for revenge slip by and set out to carry it out with meticulous calculation. Herod Antipas's birthday was the decisive moment when Salome, her daughter, captivated everyone with her mesmerizing dance. It was here that Herodias executed her revenge plan through the manipulation of her daughter. When King Herod promised Salome anything, Herodias cleverly made her daughter request the most terrifying gift, the head of John the Baptist on a platter, something she believed would be justice for her insult. Mark 6:24-25. Although Herod Antipas did not want to kill John the Baptist, as he always enjoyed the prophet's teachings, Mark 6:20, keeping his oath forced him to act against the respect he had for John. Though he felt conflicted and uneasy about ordering John's death, as he knew John was a righteous man, the respect for his oath made him carry out the request of Salome and Herodias. Subsequently, Herod Antipas ordered his soldiers to arrest John and execute him, causing the famous prophet's head to be brought on a platter and handed to Herodias through her daughter. Mark 6:27-28. Herodias may have felt victorious in that moment, but the price was not only John's death, but also her own defilement by carrying out this brutal act. Though she achieved her short-term goal, Herodias' life was no longer peaceful. Shortly after, Herod Antipas's power began to weaken, and the Herodian family lost its grip on power. The story of Herodias serves as a cautionary tale about the destructive forces of wrath and greed. She not only manipulated her daughter into carrying out a sinister scheme, but also exemplified how power can cloud one's conscience and humanity. Herodias' legacy is not merely a symbol of revenge, but a stark warning of the perilous journey of manipulating power, with catastrophic consequences born from hatred. While the Bible remains silent on her final days, Herodias' story is a powerful reminder of moral corruption and the inevitable downfall that comes from blind greed and the obsessive pursuit of power. Number 4. Delilah, the betraying woman and unfathomable greed. Of all the stories of betrayal and deceit in the Bible, Delilah's tale remains one of the most iconic examples of manipulation and boundless greed. Delilah lived during the volatile period of the Judges, when Israel was constantly under threat from neighboring nations, especially the Philistines. Although Delilah lived close to the Sorek area, which had strong ties with the Philistines, her exact origin is not clearly recorded, but her actions unmistakably reveal her connection to the Philistine leaders, bitter enemies of Israel. Delilah is most famous for her involvement in the tragic downfall of Samson, one of Israel's greatest judges, known for his extraordinary strength given to him by God. The Philistines, fearful of his strength and his victories, plotted to bring him down at any cost. Therefore, they chose Delilah as the instrument to carry out their plan. The Philistine leaders bribed Delilah with a great sum of money to discover the secret of Samson's strength. Judges 16:5. Tempted by greed, Delilah agreed and began her approach to Samson. Delilah relentlessly urged Samson to reveal the secret of his strength, a miraculous power he possessed due to God's consecration from his mother's womb. Despite Samson offering several false responses, Delilah's persistence and unrelenting pressure eventually wore him out, and he divulged the truth about his strength. In an emotional scene, as described in Judges 16:16-17, Samson finally revealed, "If my head is shaved, my strength will leave me, and I will become weak and be like any other man. With the truth in her grasp, Delilah betrayed him. She lulled Samson to sleep on her lap and summoned a man to shave off the 7 locks of his hair, thus taking away the strength God had given him. When Samson awoke, he realized he had lost his strength, and this was the moment the Philistines had been anticipating. They swiftly captured him, gouged out his eyes, and threw him into prison in Gaza, where he was humiliated by grinding grain in a mill. Judges 16:21. The cost of Delilah's betrayal was a generous reward. She received a total of 1,100 silver coins from the Philistine rulers, a considerable sum that reflected the significance of defeating Samson for Israel's enemies. Judges 16:5. After Samson's capture, Delilah disappears from the pages of the Bible, yet her betrayal leaves a deep mark. It was a turning point not only for Samson, but also for the fate of Israel. Despite Delilah's success in weakening Samson, she could not escape the consequences. As Samson remained imprisoned, his hair began to grow back, a sign that the strength from God was returning. While attending a Philistine festival at the temple of Dagon, Samson prayed to God for strength to seek revenge. God answered his prayer, and Samson brought down the temple of Dagon, killing thousands of Philistines. Judges 16:28-30. Samson's final act was a fitting revenge for the pain and betrayal he endured, while severely weakening the Philistine leaders. Though Delilah is not mentioned in this moment, she played a role in Samson's downfall. Delilah's story is not only about betrayal, but also serves as a warning about the consequences of greed and immorality. She sacrificed moral values for personal gain, leaving behind a legacy of deceit and cruelty. Delilah's story stands as a testament to the destructive power of greed and manipulation. Her legacy is a lesson in how one act of betrayal can destroy a man and all those around him, showing how power can be ruthlessly exploited. Potiphar's wife is a model of manipulation and lust, and her story serves as a warning of the destructive impact that lies can have. She allowed her desires to control her actions, leading to painful consequences. Potiphar's wife's story reveals a society where ambition and power easily push people into wrong choices. It was a world where manipulation became a tool to achieve personal goals. Potiphar, a captain of Pharaoh's guard, held great influence in society, and his family witnessed a struggle full of cunning schemes. Joseph, though a slave, became an important figure in his life. Potiphar noticed Joseph's extraordinary talents and recognized that everything he did prospered due to God's favor. As a result, he entrusted many important tasks to Joseph within his household. Potiphar's wife, despite her power and wealth, was dissatisfied with her life. She began to take notice of Joseph, who had been entrusted with overseeing all the affairs of Potiphar's household. The Bible describes her as a woman with strong desires, possibly driven by boredom or a need for control. Though Joseph firmly rejected her, reminding her that he could not sin and betray God, Genesis 39:7-10, Potiphar's wife did not relent. When Joseph continued to refuse, Potiphar's wife decided to execute a vile plan. One day, when no one was at home, she grabbed Joseph's cloak and demanded he sleep with her. Joseph, determined to protect his integrity and loyalty to God, fled from her, leaving his cloak in Potiphar's wife's hands. In her anger and sense of violation, Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of sexual assault, using the cloak as evidence, Genesis 39:11-18. Potiphar's false accusations led to Joseph's arrest and imprisonment, despite his complete innocence. Potiphar, after hearing his wife's words, became enraged and ordered Joseph to be imprisoned in the king's prison, Genesis 39:19-20. Potiphar's wife, through her schemes and deception, caused Joseph to pay a heavy price. However, what stands out is that, Although she harmed Joseph, her betrayal was not the end, but a part of God's great plan. In prison, Joseph continued to receive God's presence and blessings, and he was promoted due to his wisdom and integrity. Genesis 39:21 through 23. Joseph's story in prison was a major turning point in his life. Through God's wisdom and understanding, Joseph interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh's two servants, which paved the way for him to interpret Pharaoh's dream. This event opened the door for Joseph to rise to the second highest position in Egypt, overseeing famine preparations, saving both Egypt and his family. Genesis 41. Although there is no direct record of the punishment Potiphar's wife received, her actions could not hide God's justice. While she had devastated Joseph's life, in the end, her betrayal opened the door for Joseph to fulfill the mission God had for him. Potiphar's wife is evidence that even if people exploit the truth to cause harm, God's purpose will ultimately prevail. Potiphar's wife's legacy warns of the destructive power of deceit and greed, especially when employing tricks to manipulate and harm others. Her actions not only harmed Joseph, but also reflect the sins people commit when driven by lust and the thirst for power. Overall, the stories of these women serve as strong warnings about the dangers of unchecked ambition, deceit, and idolatry. Their stories are a clear testament to the severe consequences of losing morality and faithfulness to God. We can learn from their mistakes to pursue honesty and reverence in our own lives. By nurturing humility, integrity, and devotion to God, we can avoid the destructive path these women chose. Their lives are reminders of the consequences of neglecting God's commandments and the virtues of love, justice, and faith. Live a life that honors God, brings goodness to the world, and leads us to a life filled with peace and divine favor. Thank you for joining us in this video. If you found the content helpful, remember to subscribe and like. May God bless you. Amen.